Awesome. Hello, everyone. I
Hello.
was sad I didn't get to see you
Hey,
backstage, but that's good. So, hi, everyone. I'm really excited to have this panel on AI trends that we're expecting in 2023. And I think this sort of conversation about AI trends is an important one to have, not necessarily about the newest large language model or things like this, but how these things get applied in production systems on real business problems. Although there's some fun questions about, uh, the crazy things that you want to talk about as well. So I'm really excited to have this group of panelists with different levels of expertise and different interests, but all very well practiced at communicating these ideas with the public and with people. And I think that's super important to have. So I'm a little strange in how I like to set the order up. So I like to pick different ways to set up order. So we're going to start with intros based off of decreasing order of number of Scrabble points based off of last name. So if you take your last name and count the number of Scrabble points, we first have Greg Coquillo. I think it's the Q and the U that helps there with 19 points. And Greg's at an AI, is an AI technology manager at a large tech company. Today, not on behalf of that company, really talking about some of the experiences he's had there and kind of his strong thought leadership in the AI and AI strategy space. Greg, do you want to give a couple of well, actually, I'll introduce you all and then I'll let you guys go through again. So Sarah, with 9 points, Sarah Floris, is a senior data and ML platform engineer at Dutch Engineer. And Joe Reis, with 4 points, CEO and co-founder of Ternary Data. So for the three of you, could you tell me just a little bit about yourself and what projects you've been working on? And maybe as a fun question for an addition, the most innovative or kind of silly AI application or project you've witnessed, either that you've done or you've witnessed in recent times. And we'll start. Oh gosh, yeah. Let's start with intros with Greg.
hey guys, thank you for having me. Let me know, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Good. Hey, Bernice, thanks for having me. Joe, great to see you. Sarah.
Hi, what's up?
So I'm Greg Coquillo. I'm from Haiti and started in manufacturing. So I have a very non-traditional background and recently transferred into tech, working for one of the big ones. And I'm representing myself. Just wanted to make that clear. But I'm happy to join the community and share my expertise, my journey or my experience with you all, my excitement for this technology we've been talking about for years, right? Which is called AI. One of the things that I focus on lately is building intelligent systems that reduce cognitive overload for people. So when you think about having to read PDF documents left and right 24/7, how can we train a machine to perform the same thing, whether it's being able to extract images or understand language or understand the address or origin of a document, etc., and then taking that, putting it into an action, let's say store it in a database for humans to perform additional analysis on top of. So it's been very exciting, very entertaining, and fulfilling to work with so many smart folks. And I'm happy here today to discuss where AI is going this year.
Great. Let's go into Sarah.
Hi, so I am Sarah Flores. I am a senior data and machine learning platform engineer at Swift, and I'm currently representing my own views as a Dutch engineer. It's the company I created doing the technical blogs and things like that on the side. And I work on a day-to-day basis like what you'd think of an engineer. I deploy and build data pipelines and machine learning pipelines and manage those as needed. Um, and uh, yeah, so I'm literally in the weeds of it all in the day to day. So that's where my experience really comes from. One of the most innovative projects that I've worked on was a project called Workplace Analytics, and this was happening at the same time that COVID was starting. And so I really got to see how the different people were working. Um, and the changes that that behavior was causing. And then I ultimately was able to implement that recommendation system for that service to about 30,000 companies, which is was quite a is quite a large set of companies. And so that's where I'm coming from. Yeah.
Awesome. Joe.
Hi, what's up, everybody? How you doing? Great. So I'm Joe, recovering data scientist. What else? Author. This tome here. What else? Yeah, I live in Salt Lake City. Project I'm working on right now. I'm actually working on a new book right now on data modeling, sort of end-to-end data modeling from production systems to analytics, and also machine learning. So I think it's a topic that probably deserves a bit more attention than it has received so far. So interesting projects. I mean, I approach things more from a data engineering perspective. So I'm sort of the person who, in theory, tees up the the ML and data science teams to be successful. And so that's more of the perspective I come from, although my background is in machine learning. So
it is a rare person who finishes a book and then talks about working on their next book already.
Also a stupid person, yes. So you're getting the full package here. Yes.
All right, let's go in the reverse order then. So back from Joe on the kind of most innovative or silly application of an AI project. I know Sarah answered already, so thank you for that. But you can add another if you'd like.
I'm more of the person who could tease this stuff up, and I'm also, I still pay a lot of attention to what's going on in the machine learning and AI space. The things that I think I'm most fascinated by right now are just all the interesting art, being generated. I think that it never ceases to amaze me. Just the, I think of the combinatorials behind the art. For example, and how people are using this, mixing mediums and stuff. I think it's pretty cool. So some cool stuff, and I would say definitely overweights towards a lot of silly stuff as well. So it's a good mirror on humanity. So
awesome, cool. Sarah, do you have one to add, or do you want to pass over to Greg?
I'll just pass it over to Greg. Thank you,
okay.
though.
Yeah, for me, it's more of a one that seemed a little bit exciting, and then it turned into a little bit of a silly thing. There's this tool, probably 2-3 years ago, that's called Ideas AI, and it would send you every day on your email a list of ideas that are generated by AI. And I was like, okay, this is something that I can probably start reading to get inspiration from, until I start reading some ideas that didn't make sense and were just darn silly, and I was like, oh, okay, I need to stop doing this one. Recommending that you make an idea for ironing people's pants. I mean, it got that silly. So I was like, what is that? What am I reading? I should stop doing that. So it's still kicking in my emails. It's just that I'm not reading the ideas anymore. So I'm trying to look for sources of inspiration elsewhere.
Awesome, cool. I'll give my answer and a intro. I apologize, I forgot to introduce myself. So I'm Bernice Herman. I'm a senior data scientist at Y Labs and do lots of work related to statistics and coming up with ways that we metric and measure data for machine learning, as well as monitoring algorithms. So using machine learning itself to actually understand when do we find anomalies, what are trends over time in your data. My silly project, actually, I think with my second job, I got very frustrated with my coworkers eating food out of the fridge. So I was very committed to making a computer vision system that pointed to the fridge and detects who's in the fridge, what area of the fridge are they reaching, what's the probability that they're reaching for your food. I did not continue it because I guess my anger settled before I finished the project. But, yeah.
Did they ever find that out?
No. It stopped happening though, so I guess maybe someone was really having a rough day that day. Okay, so this is a question for everyone, and the question is related to. So this is about 2023, but before we get to 2023, we want to talk a little bit about 2022. So 2022 was eventful in artificial intelligence. We have lots of generative deep learning applications like neural radiance fields, DALL-E, Stable Diffusion, Chat GPT. But I think it's more important to bring the conversation back to trends in kind of production-oriented technologies and systems. They don't have to be models. It can certainly be something data engineering related or so on. But what was a highlight or breakthrough technique that you discovered in 2022 related to production, machine learning, and AI? So I'll give you a second to think about that, and then I'll tell you the new order, which is based on normalized Kendall-Tau rank distance of your first name. And the order goes Joe, then Greg, then Sarah. And Joe, I used Joseph because your website has Joseph and it gave you more points. Joe's really hard.
Try and shorten it. I don't think anyone else can shorten their names. Maybe Sarah could lose an H or something, but I don't know how Greg would work. So Gregory. Cool. Yeah, I'll start off. I think the conversations around data-centric AI were pretty interesting. It's something I had seen for quite a while where I think the old trope was just, throw more data at the problem and see what happens. But something I had observed over and over from doing ML was the quality of the data in the data set was largely, basically your biggest factor in terms of whether or not you get any predictive quality out of your data and your models. And so I'm glad to see this is finally a discussion point. It's something I'd been shouting in the wilderness for years and years and years, and forced me to write a book and go see a doctor and all that kind of stuff. So I'm glad it's finally a thing. And I think and also the maturity of the ML ops and also the data engineering space, right? So I think now people are starting to focus more on practices and processes and less being fixated on what's the latest and greatest tool set. There's no shortage of tools now, and I'm glad to see the industry's hopefully getting more back to basics and solving real problems. So
awesome.
Yep.
Cool. So then next on my list was Greg.
Yeah, I think the one that I can speak of is more of a highlight. Not that I discovered it, but it was being talked about everywhere. Is really tools like Copilot that are being used to augment high-skilled folks. Right? Within months, you've heard that Copilot was already coding 50% of lines for software engineers and big companies. Right? So there's no wonder why ChatGPT caught fire in the general public so fast. So, to have a tool generate code and help them document the lines, etc., that thing is a big breakthrough, really help change the world of DevOps, and is going to continue to change that. Now, imagine if, Copilot gets upgraded with ChatGPT, where you can have conversations and about, hey, give me a better recommendation here. Where do you find errors, et cetera, et cetera. I think those things are going to continue to evolve. And I think, to me, Copilot was one of the highlights in the dev world that I'm following, even though I know nothing of dev world, by the way. But I'm just a curious cat who wants to know how people use different tools, what pain points they have. And I'm typically using a product management approach to it to see what kind of problems they're having and what kind of solutions I can bring to them.
Awesome. Great. Sarah.
Yeah, so my perspective is pretty similar to Joe, as also I've done a lot of data science and data engineering work, and still am doing that on a day-to-day basis. One of the things I always like to see and want to emphasize is the data quality of what we have, right? So it's the idea of having garbage in and garbage out in models. And so the accuracy of something that has terrible data is, you shouldn't take really any, you shouldn't trust that. And so creating tools or implementing tools in the day-to-day of the engineers, scientists, I think is going to be the key for this upcoming year, and also definitely was a highlight for the last year. And so I will always champion, regardless of where I'm at, I will always champion having better data quality, not only for ML, but also for analytics and other areas. And that's what this summit is really about, right? Creating a robust and responsible AI, and definitely data ops is part of the robust portion. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So I just want to announce to everyone who's watching that we will be opening up for questions from everyone in a bit. And there's a number of different channels, I believe, that you can enter questions. So on YouTube or on LinkedIn or in the Responsible and Robust and Responsible AI Slack channel. But now let's go on to a question for everyone again. What are you anticipating to be a trend in AI, either research side or production or tools for the upcoming year for 2023? And this order will be Sarah, Greg, and then Joe, variants of the letters in their first name.
Yeah, so this is definitely, I mean, so what I mentioned just now, like, I definitely think that data quality is going to be a key also in 2023. A lot of the tools are covering most of the aspects of data ops and ML ops as well. And people are seeing that, you know, having cleaner data, having better data is going to be is resulting in better results. And so that's really what I will be focusing on 2023 and hope to get, you know, others on that too. So yeah, that's my main thing.
Awesome. Greg, what about you? Trends for the upcoming year?
Yeah, so I think the trends that I can think about are things that are evolving together, right? So we're hearing more about IoT. When I think about that and I think about streaming analytics, so really live analytics happening on the edge of devices that you wear, they're going to be more adaptable these days because people will figure out how to secure people's information, people's privacy, and things like that. And then the other thing that I'm really excited about is more of the partnership between traditional machine learning with quantum machine learning, where in a hybrid system you can achieve, the speed that you're looking for, achieve the accuracy that you're looking for. So more of that trend, I think we're gonna hear in 2023.
Awesome. Joe.
Yeah. Obviously, GPT-4, whenever that comes out, will be interesting to see. I think so. I mean, we're at an interesting point. I was talking about this with Matt at lunch today, but it feels like the industry is definitely at a tech industry in general is at a very interesting sort of inflection point where obviously the economic factors are changing how every company operates, whether you're a tech company and increasingly a non-tech company, and so that's interesting. Generative AI is obviously the elephant in the room right now. Right. I mean, it's captured the public's imagination. And so I'm very curious to see, sort of what happens in that whole space too, with respect to funding and any new breakthroughs and more critically to adoption. Right. I think there's definitely some big tech companies that, have their sights on this and very curious to see how this plays out, not just this year, but in following years. And also, whatever, if it does get adoption, what are the social impacts of that and economic impacts and so forth? I mean, that's fascinating. But, at a more pragmatic level, though, I feel like, there's sort of, so we're in an interesting space right now. It's sort of a tale of two universes. You have the generative AI camp over here, where there's, any media can be, regenerated right now. And I think that's fascinating. But on the other hand, as Matt and I always say, it's, most companies are barely doing BI, let alone AI. And how long has, business intelligence been around, right? If you look out, it's a lot of companies still struggling with this and are finally, some are getting to a point where they can start doing machine learning. And so, so it's definitely an interesting dichotomy I'm paying attention to. I don't really have an answer for how this plays out. But, it's, are these two going to intersect at some point? I don't know. Or are people who, adopt generative AI, are they just going to be that much further ahead than all these other companies? And that they just, these other companies are left on the wayside. I don't know either. So it's interesting.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's something. So the other side of my life is at the University of Washington as a researcher in machine learning. And it's really interesting seeing this kind of dichotomy between the sorts of people who do deep learning research on unstructured data types, images, text, things like that, and the people who are doing things like anomaly detection and tabular data and things like this. There's a kind of very old data set of a number of poker hands, and just predicting kind of who wins this poker hand for this. And no one has 100% on that data set. In fact, it was quite recent that anyone was getting, in the 95% on these things, right? And so this is an example of a very, very simple task, something I, taught my brother-in-law after, through $200 of his loss. But it's a thing that, the technologies we have now, it's very clear that we're biased towards these very complex input types. And those can have interesting business applications too, but they're not the only applications for sure.
Hey, Joe, you spoke about like adoption, and I really wanted to add something real quick here. I feel like the type of adoption we'll see is, with large generative AI, for example, is startups that will build on top of these models, big models, but also you have at the individual level too, right? Let me know what you think, because it's like people like you and I, we can leverage ChatGPT to go about our daily lives. But one thing I wonder with generative AI, how does that change the gig economy, right? I've been thinking about that a lot. Like if you're hiring somebody from Fiverr or something like that to do something for you, and generative AI is there, you just don't have time to use these generative AI tools. You want to pay somebody. How does that change the spectrum of gig economy, right? So it's
a good question.
Yeah.
I was on a panel yesterday talking about this exact thing, and it's a fascinating question. The gig, if you use the gig economy as a thought experiment, or not thought experiment, you can just look at what happened. Actually, I mean, it created some pretty interesting, changes in the economy, right, with people. And so, but I don't know, it's an interesting one. But I'm just looking at the stat right now that just came out. It was CBA Insights, like what, in 2022, it was at $2.6 billion was invested in generative AI startups over 110 deals. So
yeah, quite sizable. Just wanted to add that real quick.
A lot of people chasing stuff. So I mean, the question for me is whether or not this is like the new Web3, or whether or not this is actually like something more substantive. So
yeah,
we'll find out.
Great. So now I have a question about the maybe responsible side of the robust and responsible AI. I think for some, it's very clear the connection between robustness and kind of the data engineering work and some of the work that really is the backbone of production machine learning. But I do think certainly GDPR is a good example of a place where kind of responsible AI really had a lot of impact on how data engineering practice had to change and it was practiced. So I'm curious from all of you, what are different ways that you think responsible AI impacts your kind of maybe not day-to-day work, but like your actual work that you have as a engineer of any sort, or as a program manager. And I don't have an order for you, so I'll just let whoever wants to answer go.
That's right. I can throw a couple notes there. I think when it comes to responsible AI, especially if you're in the room building these sorts of solutions, you have to have some mental models built in where you have a list of questions that you're asking, and based on the answer, you adjust as needed, right? Things like, are you building something that's being fair to everyone? In terms of data quality, right? There's also, elimination of non-necessary data. Right? Do I need this column or this aspect to get my answers? Do I need people's age in my data set to arrive at a certain answer? Do I violate any policies with that, local policies or company policies when I build these models, etc.? Is there some sort of group segment of users that will be affected in a negative way? Those are the kind of like a checklist that you have to walk through based on the solution you're trying to bring, based on the solution you're trying to build, and then see how you can adjust and build mitigation plans too, right? Because sometimes there are some problems that are so nuanced that you won't be able to eliminate them all at once. You have to have a mitigation plan when something shows up. There's been a lot of talks about, cleaning the data more because before we thought that, hey, let's address the model, but if you do that work upstream with the data, you'll do less with making the model more responsible, right? So if you make the data responsible, I think that will in fact make the model responsible as well. So having those mental models around building your data set the right way really helps downstream when it comes to building ML models and launching to production.
Awesome. Anyone else want to add?
I can go. Just to add to Greg's points too, is that with having a learning data set, so machine learning is understanding what is going on in the data set, right? And at its core. And if we have data sets that have a lot of biases in them towards one group or the other. So one of the things that we've seen right now with the generative AI messages is that like female pictures end up getting overly sexualized, for example, and things like that. Like we need to really pay attention to what we're inserting in those AI models. So to make sure that is at least limited, if not that there will be other pictures that come out, right? And so that is the same thing when we were talking about tabloid data, right? So with Craig saying, is the age important? I mean, in some aspect, ages are important, but can we make it so that there's buckets of like decades of age versus like, directly giving them, like this person is 69 or because there are some trends in there that require you to know like at least some respectable age. And then there's also tools where you can actually identify like FairLearn, I think is by IBM, that will identify like, oh, you should be careful with these specifics. So having an application, like having that part of your process in your day-to-day is also definitely key when it comes to responsible AI. So.
Awesome.
I'll add too. I think it's to me it's also a very low fidelity solution as well, which is just improving things like data literacy across an organization, right? Like what's the data you're using and why are we using this data? What's in it, right? And I think it's if more people can be aware that there is even such a thing as responsible AI, for example, or just responsible use of data, that goes a long ways. I mean, the danger really is you try and do this, in a silo, or worse yet, by committee, and you don't get buy-in. And so I think that these types of efforts are incredibly important, and it really just to me it's a matter of getting people, making people aware of this and to empathize with why this needs to happen.
Yeah. So I'm curious. An example that came up for me in thinking about this is something like deleting data, right? The deletion of data is really important for things like GDPR, increasingly important when we think about responsible AI, but it's something that kind of technically can be, infeasible for some data sets or some databases and technologies to, very easy, very efficient in others. When you have to run into those sorts of technology kind of discussions or in kind of design on the technology side, how do those conversations happen, and do you see those things happening more, those conversations happening more in the upcoming year?
Sorry, what was the first part of your question?
I guess giving an example of deleting data where that can be kind of very related to the responsible side, but very much a technical decision.
Greg and Sarah, you have good answers.
Well, I was going to say, when you say it's a technical decision, I say it should be a business decision first, in a sense of you have to have policies in place to understand, how long you need to retain data. So the data retention policy should be there, right? So when it comes to building your responsible or governance of AI or ML models and things like that, you have to have a retention policy. And it depends on where you're using that data. Are you leveraging it in a country where the policy says you have to retain it for 10 years, where another country may say if you're using data locally, 5 years is enough for me. So you have to understand these environments to be able to derive those policies and house them internally so that everybody understands. So if I'm a data scientist and I'm playing with this data to launch a new model or build a new model, I have to understand that after certain years, the data has to be deleted, et cetera, to be able to make sure I have a fresh set of materials and things like that. So in other words, it should be it should start with the business needs and then trickle down to the technical decisions on how you manage it. But at the end of the day, government policies or company policies are key to making sure that we are treating data the right way. And the government is there to enforce, right? When rules are not met or we're not obeying the rules, there's got to be an enforcer in place to make sure that we are doing the right things, or to audit the way we do things as well. Whether it's an internal audit or external audit, we have to have that in place too, to make sure we're doing the right things.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a couple of really great points in there. I think the idea of this being something that is decided and then kind of comes in as a requirement, not necessarily something that happens on the technology side. And then interesting to think about the retention side. So this is kind of the long term. I think in my head, I had something like the having to remove individual data points about a single person who's requested that, which is kind of a different and sometimes a much harder technology kind of solution that you need there.
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, I was just going to say, that's the part I was going to talk about, right? Craig mentioned a lot about how it goes and trickles down into the technical teams, but as part of the technical teams, like the problem is then like, how do you delete those rows or data without deleting the impact that data has? And what I mean by that is like, so for example, if a person comes to you and it's like, I want to remove that data, right? Like we can remove the association with that person for the data, but keep the data itself. So like, let's say this person is, 60, it's in the bucket from 60 to 69 years old, but you have an ID that corresponds to that person. We can, for the right to be forgotten, we can remove the person ID, attach anything related to them, like emails, social important things, but still keep that row of information there so that you can have, so that you have that data and it doesn't skew the rest. So like the reason why you want to keep that data is because like, if that person is leaving, that you're now deleting important information about churn. And so things like that. So from a technological or practical standpoint, it is a very it's a very interesting problem. And so that I wanted to, that's something I deal with on a day-to-day basis. So it's something very, very prominent in my work.
Whatever happened to encryption? I used to read articles last year or the year before that some ML models would be able to extract features from encrypted data, right? Maybe it's a very expensive solution today that we're not talking more about it. But if it's a pain to eliminate the age or information that are pertinent to somebody's personal information, right? Can we encrypt it and then feed it into an ML model, and the ML model can kind of like extract the important features or something like that, or or not being able to decrypt the encrypted informations, or something like that, right? I don't know what happened to these discussions these days.
I am very interested in this. So there's an area, differential privacy. So this idea of adding statistical noise, either directly to the data set, or when you query the data out, or in cases where maybe users are mistrustful, they'll add that noise, using some mechanism as they push the data in. So even the company doesn't see the real data. That is a concept that certainly is still a research concept, but is being increasingly implied. For example, the 2020 US Census data, that is differentially privatized. Like this process of adding statistical noise to data sets is happening in practice in kind of certain pockets of the world.
And it's especially important when you're talking about hospital data, right? With HIPAA compliancy, making sure that the data is encrypted both in movement and stationary.
Yeah. So I think I'm curious because I think certainly for like a health tech company, this happens. I think for kind of clinicians, they have the benefit of being kind of inside the bubble, right? Like they're allowed to see the raw data, but they really have a lot of restrictions on letting any of that data out, or to individuals who don't have kind of the permissions to be able to interact with that. Awesome. So I'm going to take, so some of these questions have been kind of combinations of things from the audience. Thank you so much. I will continue to do that. So I want to take another question here. And this one is related to, again, to the responsible AI side of things from Quentin McGrath. So how are we going to address the social, like wellness and psychological and environmental, such as like power use and carbon footprint impact of kind of, AI in 2023, especially at kind of production scale and increasing scale? And whoever wants to, for all of these from now on, whoever wants to take it, you can jump in, and I won't, I'll try my best to not pressure anyone to answer it.
Joe, you want to give it a try? I just want to make sure I understand the question first too.
Yeah. So just how are we going to address? How do you think about maybe your individual roles in addressing these larger issues, social and environmental issues, as AI kind of scales?
Obviously, we'll solve them all in 2023. So that answers the entire question there. And everything will be great afterward. I'm joking. I mean, it'd be cool if we did, but I don't think so. I mean, there's a lot of nuance to this, right? And so the it's an interesting one too. If you look at generative AI, it consumes a lot of power when it's trained, but then it's actually, there's a lot of upfront power, but then it's not a lot of power afterward. It can be used. So that's an interesting thing. So I'm interested to see, if there's any advances in terms of, power consumption. This is at the same time when like coal is coming back globally because there's a shortage of just, so it's like at the end of the day, it seems like it's just a game of whack-a-mole with a lot of this stuff. So I mean, I don't have a good answer for this, except that, I mean, you do what you can, right? You do what you can as an individual. You do what you can, hopefully, as an industry, although everybody in the industry has different motives, right? And so that's going to be kind of the key, is if there was an overall like social and environmental, kind of an ESG for the AI industry, I'd, love to see it. Might be all on board with it. But this stuff, especially right now when things are like economically challenging, I think it's just going to be a lot harder to get a lot of people on board with this kind of stuff, to be perfectly frank with you. So on that cheery note, Greg, do you have any hopeful words for the future?
Yeah. So, I mean, to your point, it's nuance, really. When I think about like some companies, especially these large language models, they're being hosted, around, data centers that are trying their best to be friendly to the environment, right? Try to offset some of that, right? Leveraging sustainable energy, etc. But at the individual level, that's at the company level, etc. At the individual level, what you can do to participate there. I mean, there are groups, right? There are groups out there who are fighting for the ESG concepts, right? To hold people and institutions accountable for their actions, etc. Right? And there are ways to reach out to your local government, central government when things are not right. But as a team, it's a little bit more powerful, right? These can be the long roads to change, but what else can you do, right? Be a good citizen first.
Focus on what you can do. I'll give you an example. I live in Utah, right? And so there are a lot of data centers here, which require a lot of water. Guess what we don't have in our area, right? But what happened was the government decided, oh, well, we'll give these companies large tax breaks and they get a lot of sunlight. So it's solar powered, so on the surface, it looks, except like now the Great Salt Lake is drying up and, so I get to deal with that. So I don't know. All these things are complicated issues, right? You have these issues precisely because they're complicated. If as an industry, we could figure it out, I'm sure, we'd love to do that. But this is, it was a long time getting here, and in my opinion, it'd be a long time getting out. So
yeah, it's what you stand for, right? What you believe in, and at the individual level, it starts with you. If you feel like there's an area in AI that affects your community or people who look like you, then start pairing up with that community, and as a group, you figure it out together to raise your voice, right? Those are the long road to change, but this is what we have now. This is what we can control, and it starts with being a good citizen and helping others be a good citizen as well. So very complicated area, but I like the question.
It's a good question.
All right. Sarah, if you don't have any thoughts, then I'll jump to the final question, just for folks to maybe go through and say what you want to say to the audience, talk about what you're working on, last thoughts from our questions. And then maybe we will start with Sarah, go on to Joe, and finish with Greg.
Can we start with someone else?
Yeah. And Joe, do you have any final thoughts?
Nothing I haven't said before. I will recap though. I feel like the we're at an exciting time as an industry. I think as the question we just attempted to feebly answer pointed out, there's a lot of challenges, but I would like to think that we're all smart people and solution oriented, and so I hopefully we can figure out the practical aspects of making machine learning more of reality, and obviously with ML ops and responsible ML ops and all that, that's definitely a great start. And so, but it's up to us. I don't know who else is really going to be around to to help figure this out. So we either work together to figure this out, or we don't. So but I'm hopeful.
Awesome. Greg, final thoughts?
I definitely feel the same. And at the end of the day, as someone who has a relatively short timeline on this earth, I just want to make sure I leave with good memories, right? I build good ones, right? When I think about technology, I try to understand how this technology can help me have the best experience on earth. Right. So whether I'm the one who builds it or other people build it for me that I can download on my app. Right. It's about having the best experience on earth. And, if I can find these tools, these apps to help me do so, then I welcome it. I embrace it. And if I can be in the room to build these experiences, whether I'm at the individual level or working for a company, this is something also that gives me a sense of fulfillment. Right. So and helping others to grow in that journey too, like get more skills to be a builder of AI solutions. Right. I love, mentoring people and things like that. So at the end of the day, whether you're a company, your goal is to create the best experience for your customers. If I'm at the individual level, my goal is to create the best experience for myself and leave with the best memories, because I can't live with these killer apps on my phone like generative AI and things like that, right? So I might as well use them to upload things into my brain and leave Earth in a good shape. So
awesome. Sarah?
Yeah, and then more from a practical side. I mean, obviously, what Greg and Joe were just saying is it's a team effort, right? To be creating robust and responsible AI is a team effort, whether that is leadership working with the data scientists and the data engineers from perspective, or product managers as well. It needs to we need to come together to create these ideas and to pull the right amount of data to make sure that there aren't any biases in those data, and really make sure that we're doing our part when it comes to it. Because I mean, like AI itself, ChatGPT, you've seen it. They're great tools, but we need to make sure that we're doing the best that we can to also, do it responsibly. So yeah, that's my last thoughts.
Awesome. Thank you all for joining the panel. It was really great talking to you.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah.